All right, can everyone hear me? We're okay? No, not at all? Not even a little? All right. So I'm going to take you guys through everything that we talked about yesterday and what we're taking all of the clients through. But I'm going to go through a little more detail on the technical aspects of things. So who was here yesterday and heard the initial talk? Oh, who was not? All right, let's do this again then. So the way this thing works is what we're trying to do is make everything in this room a little bit more viable for clients, okay? And the reason we're doing this is because over the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen that clients have started moving away from in-store and putting all of their money in digital. The reason they're doing this is because when they put their money in digital, it's very easy for them to figure out whether something is working or whether something is not. All right? So Unilever and Procter & Gamble, for example, have moved around 70 to 80% of all of their budget from media and so on into digital media and into e-commerce. The majority of the advertising agencies have not hired any new people within the brick and mortar section. They've hired everyone in the digital space. It's not because digital works that much better. Honestly, if you look around and you go to Dubai Mall, you'll realize how important a brick and mortar place is. If you walk into Carrefour, you'll see how many people are walking in and buying stuff. The issue isn't whether the stuff is happening and people are buying there. The issue is, are we being able to prove that everything that we're doing is working? And that's where the big problem is coming from. It's like a black hole of information, basically. A sample's given out by a promoter. Did it cause a sale? Did the people grab the sample? Were the samples thrown in the garbage can without telling the client and we hid it away? They worry about this stuff. They worry about this stuff because there are agencies that do stuff like that. And over the course of your career, you're going to get into a situation where there was a dumping process or there was a problem where you spent the money and there was zero return that you could show your management and your team. So what I'm going to do right now is, rather than talk about only the context of tracking, I'm going to try and put it in the context of everything that we're doing here, okay? Which is being able to sell better experiences inside stores, yeah? Not by making them more extravagant, but by understanding how they work and how they create a sale, okay? Because the second mistake that we do sometimes is that when we go to clients, we forget that it's all about them making money, and we start thinking, oh, if I give them this massive augmented reality thing, then it's going to solve everyone's problem. No, you might need augmented reality. You might need to use augmented reality to make something happen, but your objective isn't to turn the supermarket into a circus. Your objective is to make the sale happen. And everything that's in here is a tool just for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go step by step through the process of seeing how we can prove that the things that we're doing work in a step-by-step process, and how we can integrate that into the things that we do to keep continuously improving it, and then how we can take all of that data and work with a company like Data Orbis, for example, to put it all together, turn it into a dashboard, have our clients log on to one place, and then receive all of the information and see that everything is working step by step, so that they stop wondering whether they need to pull their money out or not, and start wondering how much more money they need to invest to grow their business. Is that clear to everyone? Are we all okay with this? All right. We're a bit of a crowd, so we're going to need to figure out how we're going to stand to be able to look at that screen over there, okay? So move this way, and you've got to be able to see this thing in particular. I'm not as important as this screen, so if you cannot see me, but you can see the screen, it's fine. I'm loving the point shirts, by the way. So, the first step in the process is understanding the difference between interaction, relevant interaction, yeah, and just a view or a footfall. Because that's the biggest issue, right? How can we prove that a person didn't just pass by, but that they actually had an interaction with what we did, and that that interaction caused a sale? If we're able to prove these three things, then we're pretty much in a good place, right? The previous technology allowed us to do something called line counting. Yes, 100 people passed through here. Fine. And then what? Did they pay attention? When they paid attention, did they care? If they cared, did it then cause them to think, I want one of those? And when it caused them to think that, did they end up actually picking it up? When we figure out whether they did all of these steps, we can find out which step isn't working very well, right? If they passed by but didn't notice that it existed, then we need to increase the stopping power. We need to add more vibrant colors. We need to make it bigger. We need to attract more attention. If they saw it, but then they walked away from it quickly, it means that we didn't pique their interest. It was vibrant, it was colorful, it was huge, but it wasn't interesting. It wasn't something that made them feel, yes, this is important to me, right? We know that this stuff's important to us. We know that it's important to our clients, but was it important to a shopper? And when you think of a shopper, you need to stop thinking about a person that's waltzing around thinking, oh, here's a new experience that I want to do. No, it's a lady walking through a supermarket with 2 kids pulling at her, asking for the chocolate. She's looking for the thing that she's going to cook for tonight. These are the real situations. So if you're thinking that the solution, oh, they weren't interested, let's make a Fruit Ninja game. That's not necessarily what's going to solve your problem. Sorry, some technical issues here. So what we need to do is figure out, was it interesting? Then after was it interesting, did they interact? And after the interaction, did they buy? Because if they found it interesting but didn't interact, there's something about the experience or the product that is not appealing. If they interacted and did not buy, it means the product didn't deliver or the price was too high. So it wasn't something that delivered on the promise. So if someone comes up and you give me a cookie and I eat the cookie and then I don't buy it, it's either because I didn't like the cookie or because the cookie was good but the price was too high, or, which is the last one that happens a lot, it's good but I don't need it right now. Which is where promotions play a very big role. Because today you can have it at 20% off, tomorrow you're going to have to pay full price. All right, fine, I'll take one with me. Yeah? So this starts framing the type of promotion that you want to place. Is it a matter of changing their mind just for the moment, or is it a matter of loading their pantry and so on? So how can we figure out where the drop-off happened? That's where we start using the technology. You see how long it took for me to start talking about the technology? It's not about the sensors. It's about understanding the process that we're going through and where the drop-off happens. It's about understanding how to create the sale and then figuring out how to place the right technology to do this. We've been talking for a good 5 minutes, and now we're going to talk about the sensor. Are we clear enough about this? If you come in to a client and say, hey, I've got the sensor that's going to... They don't care. You haven't made it relevant. Fair? All clear? Great. Now let's take a look at the sensor. So we're going to look at my face right here because I'm going to be doing some things. The first thing we're going to see is it doesn't really see my face. It doesn't really see my face. It is anonymous. It's not a video. It doesn't capture anyone's picture. It doesn't do a stream. It's not something that if someone hacks it, then they're going to have a view into a full bunch of supermarkets. It is safe. It is GDPR compliant. And it respects everyone's privacy. Okay? The way it works is not by seeing my face. The way it works is by capturing the dots that are on my face and then figuring out how big is his nose. Because although your body stops growing, your bones stop growing, your nose does not. So if it sees the size of your face, and then it sees the amount of facial hair, and it sees that you're going bald, and it sees that your nose is still growing, it knows that you're an older guy. It knows that you're not 16 anymore. So it can determine age. Okay? That's how the age determination happens. It is a machine learning process that is based on points that are pulled out. Just like in Lord of the Rings, they made the guy wear the suit with the ping pong balls to see how his movements were so that they turned him into Gollum or Smeagol or even the dragon. It's the same technology that does this. But it doesn't need me to put ping pong balls because it would be very weird to go up to shoppers and tell them, could you hold it right there and start sticking stuff on them while they're walking around. So it does it automatically. So this is able to figure out generally how old I am. It means it can't say, Roy, you are exactly 36. That is not going to happen. It is not that precise. But it can be 95% confident that Roy is between 30 and 38, for example, or 35 and 40, for example. So it'll give us a range. Here we decided to make this range the generation range. I'm a Gen Y, I'm a millennial. I'm at the edge of being a millennial. A lot of people are Gen Xers, they're slightly older than I am, or Gen Z, younger than I am, and it makes that difference. But if we wanted to put age brackets instead, because our clients work in specific age brackets, we can do that as well. Fair enough? The other thing you'll notice is that it doesn't do one face at a time. It captures multiple faces. And this one is with a weak sensor. If we put a stronger sensor on it, because this is only for demos of small groups, if we put a smaller sensor, it can capture. So the background, the technical part back here that's doing the calculations, can do 200 faces per frame, okay? 15 frames per second. So it captures a lot of people at the same time. We don't need to worry about crowds. And it figures out their age bracket, it figures out their gender, and it figures out, you see the arrows? If I look in one direction, it'll think that the arrows are moving in one direction, and then I look another, it knows the arrows are looking in another. It knows where the attention is going. So it can figure out, am I looking at this section, this section, this section, or this section, to start seeing a few more things. Now, how does this help us? You remember what we were talking about in terms of the drop-off? If it sees a person but not their face, it's footfall, but no notice. If it sees their face for less than 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds, it is notice, but no dwell. If it sees them for longer, it's dwell. And then it starts looking. Where did they look? Did they understand what they were seeing? Did their facial expression change? And then it combines all of these things, and it goes, they were interested, or they were not interested. It also sees distance. You see where it says 1.24 meters, 1.43 meters. When I get closer, 1.1, 1, 95, yeah. It knows distance, so now it knows whether I interacted or not, whether I approached it to interact. You see how we're starting to do the conversions that we talked about before? It can figure these things out for us. The only thing it cannot figure out is offtake, right? And that's why we need to either use another technology to measure offtake, or we need to do it manually. Stock before, stock after, minus replenishment stock, and we know how much we got offtake from this in particular. Or EPOS data if it's shared by the client, by the retailer. And you see, when we start going into that, if we get a piece of information from here, and EPOS from there, and information from here, this is where it starts becoming important to combine everything into a dashboard, because we're not going to go up to the client and go, look, we're going to give you up to here, and then you can go look at your Excel sheets and figure out whether the next thing happened, and then eventually we'll figure out if it worked. This is where the combination of the data becomes very important into one dashboard. Now, what I'm going to do now is show you our dashboard later as an example, but our dashboard takes a certain amount of data if you want to start combining stock, and if you want to combine POSMET, and if you want to put everything into one thing, you talk to the Data Orbis guys and they show you how they turn that into a single dashboard. And that's how you start combining several of the processes and several of the services together to go to a client with a package. We've got that stand, we've integrated this tech into it, and then we've taken all the data and put it on that dashboard. You get this one package and it tells you everything that you need. Fair enough?
Yeah. How far the sensor will work?
It depends. This one will go up to 8 meters. Okay. It'll be very accurate up to 6. Right. If we put a stronger sensor, we've had one that worked up to 27 meters. That was the strongest one, right? Yeah.
It's cover half circle or like...
This is a wide angle range because it's easy to do, but the only thing it doesn't work with is 180 and 360 systems. It doesn't work with that yet because of the distortion. We haven't figured that out yet, but it's got a wide angle, so you're fine. I mean, you can see it's going all the way to the camera right now, so it's quite wide. Cool? Now, if we have the chance to look into offtake, and we can't get the EPOS data, but we own the stand, then we can add this thing to it. Slide in if you can. If you can't, just see it from there. It's a very simple process where wherever I try to grab something, the sensor knows where my hand went. Okay? I know there have been a lot of technologies with weight and panels to see it. This one does not use that because the weight is very expensive. You're going to need to put it, you're going to need to maintain a lot. This uses one piece that is down here, and it's basically a pretty advanced technology that uses a radar type mesh to figure things out. The important thing is that in the back end, there's an algorithm. Just like with that thing, there's a thinking process that figures out the difference between interest and just view. The same thing happens here to figure out, did they pick it up and put it back? Did they just move them around? Did they really take it off and it never came back? It's able to understand all of these things by knowing the angle of entry and the angle of exit and all of these things so that it really understands what's going on. So now you've got all the way to offtake. And then EPOS will give you whether it turned into a sale or not, or whether they threw it away, which is a denigration rate of a very low 0.6%. So you shouldn't worry too much about it. Is it clear now in terms of the conversions? Right? So what we've covered now is a scenario that is appropriate for when you have a section in a retailer, but not a full retailer. If you have the chance of covering a big section in a retailer, like a full category, or a full store, or a bank branch, or anything like that, and you want to go beyond one point of contact, and you want to do multiple points of contact, then you can do several of them. You can put them in different places and see, did they look at that ad and then go and do an action and buy something? Or did they look at this one? Or did they look over there? You can figure that out. But you're still missing the big picture if you're looking at a full space. You're getting snippets of the picture. What you want is to be able to get the full picture of how people are walking around, where they went, where they stopped, and what they were doing. For that, we use that one. That one's able to give us a lot more information. The information that comes from up there is not just line counts, did they cross into this section or not, did they walk in, but it'll give us a full path map of how people walked around. Did they first come in and look at this and then look at that and then go over there, or were they interested in that directly and they went straight to it? Did they ignore half of the stuff that we put or not? When we did one evaluation of a sales spot in Dubai Mall, we figured out that although they were paying around $200,000 a month, right, for the space, because it was a very large space and they'd taken it for the full year, they were not using 50% of their space. They were throwing $100,000 in the garbage can on a monthly basis. That's $1.2 million a year that they're just not using. And we pointed that out by showing that nobody goes through the path where they go there, nobody dwells on that, nobody even looks at that section, they come straight here, this is the interesting part. And that way we were able to expand that part to the full area, double the amount of people that were interacting, and increase the conversion rate, which brings us back to the fact that we increased the sale. We're starting to understand how we use the tech, and always go back to the client with, we will increase your sales. It's not we have a sensor for you, we have a way to double what you're doing. That's how you start every conversation, and that's how you end every conversation. It's very important to begin with, I can help you increase X, and end the conversation with, did you understand how using all of this will help you increase X? That's how you begin, and that's how you end. Fair enough? All right, we're going to go to that screen now to see the output of this thing. All right, good timing. It's starting up again. So, this is a simple line count. This is for us to know, did people walk in or not? And by putting a line, an imaginary line, here, here, and over there, you can see how many people walked in from here, how many from there, how many from there, and you can establish what is really your main entry point, because although you planned for it to be here, the majority seem to be coming from there. Reevaluate your customer flow. After they enter though, remember I was talking about the path mapping? This is what we see. We're able to know the directions they took, and not for one person at a time, it manages it for everyone at the same time, and then we end up with a general path map of what is most popular in terms of the direction that is being taken. what it also does is tell us, okay, they've walked that way. Where are they stopping? Where are they standing for a longer amount of time? So now look at the combination of things that we've got. 1, we know where they walked in from. 2, we know which direction they took. 3, we know where they stood. 4, we know where they looked. 5, what they were interested in. 6, what they interacted with. And 7, what they ended up buying. And when you combine all of these things, it gives you a very easy way of optimizing the space and increasing its usefulness, which is the objective of everything that we do. We're clear on all this? Cool. Now, in case you want to do this stuff, but you can't install it anywhere, right? Because this needs an installation, that needs a spot. That needs to be placed on something, and we don't always have that opportunity. There's a way of doing it in a portable way. This is just an example. The important part of it is this part. This part can be redone depending on the sample that you're giving out, or if you're just doing a brand talk and you just want to make it flat to show the products and show the difference between the products. Anything you want to do would happen here. And what's going on is that everything that I showed you over there is happening in here and is battery operated and can be placed on a 1x1 stand or can be held and strapped on by, you know, the promoters and walked around with. This is quite light. It's the same weight as a laptop, basically. Yeah, and when you swing it around, it's decently comfortable. Our promoters have been able to use it for long periods of time without becoming uncomfortable. We've tried this out. This is just an example strap. We make ones that are more elaborate so that it's more comfortable with a strap around the waist. It's just to show how it works, basically, right now. Okay, this is very easy to use, and you don't need to ask for any Wi-Fi, you don't need to ask for any electricity, you don't need to do any of that. That gets us into the whole debate of asking for permissions and getting all of those signatures done. You just use it. Another thing I want to point out is the stuff that I've been showing you on these screens are just for demonstration purposes. Okay? We don't have people's faces popping up on the screen while we've got the activity going. We've got a video like this one going on, and in the background, all of the calculations are getting done. Okay? So it is not something where we put this thing and we go, hey, look at yourself. Because if you do that, then you undo all of your research, because the moment you tell a person, I am watching you, they start behaving like someone who's being watched. And your research goes down the drain. That's why there's a concept of blind testing and double blind testing to make sure that your research is not biased. And that's the process that we follow so that we keep the integrity of the research. Are we clear on that? It's legal, yes, because it does not recognize a person's face.
But would Saudi allow it?
Yes, it does.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So what you've got over there is what's it called? Is a machine that allows you to do augmented reality and move around. That one can recognize your face and is allowed because it's a game, right? This one cannot recognize who you are. It cannot identify you. It cannot even record you. Even the stuff that I showed you guys on the screen there does not get saved. The only thing that stays are the small numbers on the bottom. How many meters away? Which generation are they in? Male or female? But it never records anything. Anything.
So you don't need to take permission, nothing?
No. You just run it because it's a matter of, it's like the line counters.
Right.
If I put a line counter to cross someone, you're fine because you're not identifying the person that walked through. As long as you keep everything extremely anonymous, you're fine. The moment you can recognize the person and connect them to a database and say that person was in that place and I know who they are, you're in trouble. That's why we never, ever identify the human being and we never record anything, ever. Except for now because we're recording training.
How expensive is it? Because I wouldn't be able to afford it for all my markets as well as all my customers.
No, you wouldn't. The way that would work is you have to look at it from a sample perspective. So when you do research, what you end up doing is saying, I've got 100 locations. We come up and we look at all the locations and we go, great. These 10 are similar to each other. These 8 are similar to each other. These 20 are similar to each other. Let's take one of those, 2 of those, one of those, one of those, and you end up with 10 to 20% of your full universe tracked, and then the rest is extrapolated based on the minor differences, where we go, these were similar to each other, but there are 100,000 people that go in and 75,000 people that go in there. So multiply it by 0.75, and you get your estimate for this place.
So you kind of sit with the client and ask them their flagship stores, basically.
Not just their flagship stores, similar stores, because flagship stores will behave like each other, mid-tier stores will behave like each other, and lower-tier stores will behave like each other. We will take a sample of each so that we can recognize everything together. That way they can save money on the amount of hardware that they're putting in, and we can make money from the part that really we want to make money from, which is the conclusions that we draw, rather than selling hardware and software.
But would this not be more inclined towards customer rather than principal? Like Carrefour's and P&G would be more interested in investing than actually P&G and Unilever. So it's a more retail-oriented,
this one, yes. That one, no. See, with that one, if I'm spending $2 to $3 million a year with promoters giving out cookies, I want to know what's going on as a brand. If I'm creating a new category management system in Carrefour and I want to see whether it's working, then I'm investing in it as a retailer with a brand. So it's situational.
All right.
Yeah? More questions?
How long do you need to take those data?
How long do we need for the data? So what we usually recommend, so we need to get the data to become quantitative. For it to become quantitative, you need to cross certain thresholds. What we recommend is usually an absolute minimum of 2 weeks, so that you can have 2 weekends and 2 sets of weekdays, so that you can do a comparison. That is the bare minimum, and then after a month, you're starting to be in a good place. 2 to 3 months is a good sample. Then it depends on what tests you want to run. Do you want to see the difference between pre-Ramadan, during Ramadan, post-Ramadan, and a normal day? You're going to need to cover all of them to be able to get that. The good news is, and I'm glad you asked that question, is that you don't need to wait until you're done collecting to see the output. The moment the installation happens, we're going to move over there now, the moment the installation happens, you start getting a live data feed into your dashboard. And if you're combining data from several live places, then you put them all into a place like with Data Orbis, and then they can log on a random Wednesday and see what happened. And then because it's an active, it's a dynamic dashboard, they're able to click on the things that are important to them, they're able to filter it the way that they want to, and they're able to see what they're looking for. Yeah?
Wait, this is a question. Just your response from retailers.
Yeah.
I would guess that retailers would be very interested in this technology. Have you had barriers from the retailers?
Yes, we've had a lot of barriers from the retailers. See, the retailers and the brands are in conflict when it comes to data. The retailer wants to sell data to the brands, and the brands want to share data with the retailers. So when we tell a brand, when we tell a retailer, this brand wants to collect this data, they go, no. We'll collect the data, and then we'll give it back to them, and then we'll use it to negotiate better terms. So now, whenever we're speaking to a retailer on a category or a retailer level, it's a different type of data than the stuff that the brands are looking for, and then either an exchange can happen, or a deal the way they usually do deals, but we can't get involved in that relationship because that's between the brand, the distributor, and the retailer. We're only the execution and data intermediary. Fair enough?
Do you see the retailers, do you see a way around that? Because obviously the retailers need to allow you to put the technology into
Yes,
stores.
we do. It's slow, it's continuous, and it's education.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Can you adapt in this market, the distributor has a stronger relationship, right? And they already have a platform. Can you integrate that to their platform?
He can. Yeah. So the answer is always yes. Every piece of data that we bring in, and this is why we work with the integration with everybody, right? The whole objective is to always have data in a format where it can be reanalyzed. And the standard data formats that come out are usually something called a structured data format, like an SQL, a JSON file, or a CSV. So these are the formats with which the data comes out. That's why we only put in the numbers into the sheet, and then the sheet gets exported, and then it can be manipulated. It can be manipulated as in reconstructed in the way that you need. It can be combined with other data to draw new conclusions. It can be used independently. It can be placed in a dashboard, or it can be used in a report. Cool? Excuse me. We'll cut that out later. So we're going to come over here and see the kind of dashboard that is useful to a client. Now, the first thing I want to tell you, which is very important, is that no two dashboards need to be the same. It depends on the client's priorities. So when they tell you what will the dashboard look like, the answer is it will take one workshop to sit together, understand your priorities, understand your KPIs, and then we will build it for you. So it depends on their priorities. This one is a dummy set of data, obviously, because we're not going to share customer data right now. And what we're able to do is, for example, find the difference between men and women in terms of purchasing within the Middle East. And there still is a very big difference. If we were running the same piece of data in a Scandinavian country, we will see less of a disparity. But over here, we still see some traditional roles happening, and we see the difference in terms of the time when everyone goes to the supermarket, the day, the time of day. The effect of a promotion, did it work? Did it increase? Did it not? Did the increase happen and then it dropped right after? So it was a good promotion temporarily, but then it didn't continue picking up. Did you launch and everyone was happy during the launch, but after they tried it a few times, they hated it, so it didn't work out? And then small things about behavior start popping up. For example, ladies will go to the supermarket in the afternoon. And then a couple of hours later, when they get home and realize they forgot something, they will send their husbands to go get it in the evening. Right? So you see that kind of behavioral change that happens, and we're able to identify when what is happening, so that then we can tell the promoters how to deal with these situations. We can change what's on shelf to deal with the situation. You can make the screen give another message to deal with the situation, and you can make the whole thing automatic because the dashboard can be connected to all that. And then you can evaluate the impact of different promotions, different activities. Did spending all that money work? For example, here, the gold budget got them to a 75% offtake increase. The silver got them 46%, and the bronze got 63%, which means that it's not the more money you spend, the better it works. It means that this activity was really good. This activity was probably best in terms of value for money, and this one was the worst. Remove this. Don't do this again. Do more of this one, because it seems to be cheap and it seems to be working. And then when you get into details about it, remember what we were talking about over there? Did they pass by it? Did they look at it? Did they notice it, so that we see what to fix? We put it in more understandable terms. Is your placement good? Is your notice rate good? Is the interest rate in your activity good? Is the engagement with it good? And are you converting and selling? And they're able to look at this and filter it by location, by store, by time of day, by day of week, by week within the month, so that we see when people receive their salaries, how we get this big spike, while at the end of the month we see that not so much before the salaries are disbursed. We can start seeing all of this. When is the right time to do a promotion? Should I do a promotion for Ramadan during Ramadan, when I know that at least 3 to 4 weeks in advance they're doing their shopping for all of their basics? Flour, oil, all of that stuff happens way in advance. Chocolates will happen a week or two in advance, because that's when I'm preparing the house for it and not just the pantry. So we start seeing those behaviors and habits, and we start building the dashboards around that. And then eventually what we're able to do once the project is done, why is this not working? Once the project is done, is we're able to create a full report. And during that report, and honestly out of everything we've done, this is the most important part. When we're done, or when we're at least a few weeks through, remember you were asking me how long does the data take? So we can start drawing a conclusion and a recommendation. See, the dashboard is observational. This is what is happening. The report is recommendation based. Here is what you should do. That's what your client is looking for. They're looking for the actual recommendations. And the moment this loads, I'll show you how that works. An example of it would be, you saw when I was showing you guys the gold, silver, bronze. An example would be increase the amount you spend on bronze and extend the amount of time that you do it there and remove the silver completely. We're also able to calculate the impact of that, because if you're doing the bronze in 10 more stores and it performs the same way as it is performing now, you will make this much more money. And we can quantify it in dirhams, in dollars, in rand, in whatever currency we're working on at that point in time. On the other hand, we can also show that how much money you've saved. By stopping the silver stuff and doing the bronze stuff, this was the difference in cost per store, which means that by the time your activity was done, you were going to spend $500,000. You still hit all of your targets, but you've spent $400 instead. So we saved you this much money by doing it. Saving money doesn't always need to happen through a negotiation where you reduce the margin of your supplier. It can happen by becoming more efficient. Actually, when you save $50 in one place, or you decide to go more efficiently, the amount of money you save through efficiency dwarfs the amount of money that you save through the scale negotiations. Especially in a situation like this, where we were able to figure out that they were running a promotion that they didn't need to run. They were running a twin pack at 10% off, and they were running a triple pack at 10% off. They're losing more money on running the twin pack. They're also making less money by running the twin pack. So unless the twin pack is a lot more appealing and the price point is a lot more appealing to the shoppers, they shouldn't be running it at all. So we tested it. We removed the twin pack from one of the stores and we saw, did people stop buying the product or did they switch over to the triple pack instead? And we found that they switched over to the triple pack. So we replaced all the twin pack promotions with triple packs, and within 2 weekends on a project that had cost $150,000, we made an extra $600,000. Let's say we'd negotiated the hell out of that 150 and brought it down by what? 10%? 20%? 50%? You would have saved what? 70,000 compared to making an extra 600? The other thing we found out is we didn't need to do any sampling. It turns out if you just tell them about the benefit, they still buy the product at the same rate. We stopped sampling in one of the stores. That's called an A/B test, where you run with and without. We did brand talk and we did sampling, and we saw, was there a difference? And it turns out no. Brand talk was just as good as sampling. All they needed to know was the benefit. And we saved 80,000 dirhams in samples. So it's about making more money and about saving more money. And that's how we show the cost reduction, the revenue increase, and the exact recommendations that are required to be able to do that. More is more, do the right promotion. Game the bargain hunters by knowing when to plug the promotion in. Prioritize your location, not your size. Focus on prompting people, not on being in their face. So it turns out this was as effective as this whole thing, so you don't need to waste your space with all of that, which makes your negotiations easier, makes your rental cheaper. Everything becomes more efficient, and that's the kind of things that come out. And this isn't a special case. We have never had an in-market implementation without results like this, simply because we were able to track them. So to go back to what we were talking about, you see how I started with how we're going to help, and I ended with how we helped? That's how the pitch works. Here's what we're going to do for you. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's what we did for you. Yeah? You always go with those three, over and over again. That way, you're not convincing them of buying something. You're convincing them of making what they have better. And that's the whole point of this. Any more questions? Are we all clear? That's it. That's all we got. Thanks, guys.